Everybody to another edition of Disclosure Dialogue here at the Laughlin Congress in 2009. Now, some of you were here last year where we brought on Dan Bursch, Area 51 scientist, who has never really come forward before. And he stood here and explained his remarkable story that had to do with Area 51, live EBEs, and of course, Majestic 12. Well, we are carrying on this fine tradition with Gordon Novell, someone who has had a front row seat to history and has even participated in more ways than one. He's an infamous person with a very large personality and a very large body of knowledge at his disposal. And we're going to continue this discussion of MJ12, along with his insider knowledge about alien technology and what the government knows and what they have at their possession, who pulls the strings, and what's possible to take this technology forward and perhaps end our dependence on natural gas and oil. Please welcome to the stage Gordon Novell. Gordon, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
This, I'm sure, for you is a change of pace.
Bit.
Does it feel like you've been dragged out of the shadows?
Yeah, well, I got a cold that kind of drug me into the shadows.
You are someone who is infamous. Good and bad, you have been part of history.
I don't go with the infamous. I would rather go with the semi-famous.
Well, I think it's fair to begin where history finds you, and that's back in the 70s and 80s. You were involved in the JFK assassination to the degree that one of the prosecutors was trying to find you to serve a subpoena on you. Can you take us back to that time?
Well, I was his chief of security, so I kind of dumped on him with the NBC with a lie detector test that said he was faking the whole thing. So, I mean, he had reason to be mad.
Who's he?
Jim Garrison.
Jim Garrison.
Yeah, I was
your arch enemy at that time.
Yeah.
And you were not particularly interested, I guess, in talking to him.
No, it wasn't a matter of talking. It was a matter that if I said anything, I was going to either be held in contempt for not saying it, or I was going to be charged with perjury for saying. So you couldn't win. It was catch-22. So I just decided I would avoid him.
So you fled to Ohio.
I didn't flee. I went up to pick up an engagement ring from my former wife.
Okay.
That was what, there was no fleeing at all involved, and it just happened that he decided to send me a subpoena while I was in Ohio.
Still, not a bad strategy. No one would ever think to look in Ohio.
Well, thank God I befriended the governor, and so I didn't have a problem.
Not too bad, not too bad. Well, you, of course, have been sort of linked into this cover-up, too, of the JFK assassination. Is that fair?
Well, you know, I got to kind of disagree with you about this because I don't think you've got the proper perspective.
Set the record straight. Yeah.
At that time, I was working both for Garrison overtly and covertly. I was working for the White House and the Attorney General of the United States. Ramsey Clark was one of my best friends. And we knew that Garrison, we had a pretty good idea that there was an assassination conspiracy, but it wasn't the one he was playing with. And the resentfulness was that he was trying to frame the CIA and avoid his avoid his putting any of his spotlight on the mafia because he was too friendly with them. And so we took some umbrage at that, and they asked me if I could unhorse him. And I'd been working at the White House on another project when all that happened, and it just happened. But
when you say you were working with Garrison, in what capacity?
I was his chief of security.
Chief of security.
Yeah.
And so, what other duties did that entail?
Making sure his phones weren't bugged, and keeping basically a good eye on him to make sure that the people who were walking in and out of the office weren't tape recorded, or that somebody wasn't trying to set him up, et cetera, et cetera. But
did you foil any plots?
No, the only plot I foiled was his plots to frame the people he was trying to do, because he was taking letters off the typewriters he seized in evidence. And he would write letters and photocopy signatures using a Xerox machine because people didn't realize how easy it was to do. So it was mostly the plot I was trying to foil was his plot to frame the government. No, I never was. I came up in the streets of New Orleans, and I was a street fighter, and I knew how to fight, and one thing and another. But that didn't make me capable of going around and being an intimidator. I know how to intimidate, believe me. So, but the point that I'm making is that isn't what I do. What I do is intelligence. I don't know. Brain and brawn is for fools. You know, it's just not my style.
Well, at some stage, you switched tracks. You were obviously involved in this quasi-political backseat maneuvering for quite a long time, which I guess you were able to make a living out of. But at some point, you turned your attention to exotic technology. Tell us how that began for you.
Well, it began for me when I built I got into the electronic surveillance business after the World's Fair. I built the Bourbon Street Pavilion.
Which World's Fair? What year are we talking
64, 65, that one.
Okay.
I also created the 84 World's Fair in New Orleans. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm an industrialist besides being a spook. Okay.
Interesting. Okay, so 64 World's Fair. Take us there. What
I built Bourbon Street, which was about 180,000 square foot under roof, and was trying to emulate my father and my mentor who gave me a job when I was in college building balloons for around the world in 80 days. I got to gaggle at his wife, Elizabeth. You know. So, you know, I've had sort of a storied career in life, in college, and one thing and another.
So tell us how you came to be involved, perhaps in the UFO field, the back engineering, this exotic research.
We were building race cars when I was a kid, and we decided we wanted to go to the Salt Flats, and that's how I got hooked up with Chet Herbert and John DeLorean and all these famous people in the racing business, because we built a car that held a world land speed record. I designed it for 40 years. We had a AA Unlimited. We took a Ford Thunderbird, turned it into a Bonneville Streamliner, and made it go 240 miles an hour, and the record at that time was 169, so nobody touched it, because we introduced quietly nitrous oxide to racing, and it really gave us a lot of power. Nobody knew about it for 20 years or so. We forgot to tell the inspectors. You know, it worked real good, because it was the secret of how the British won the Battle of Britain, because the Germans had the twin supercharged ME-109s and Stukas, and they could fly at 40,000 feet, and the poor little Spitfires couldn't get above 25,000. They'd dive down on them, shoot them up, and the Brits were losing. And a brilliant engineer by the name of Sir Harry Ricardo found out that if you just turn open a bottle of nitrous oxide into an engine, 40% power increase. We found out about it and put it on the Bonneville Salt Flats and set the record up so high nobody could touch it for 40 years. So I was real proud of that. I mean, we didn't cheat because it was not illegal. We just didn't tell them the fire extinguishers were really nitrous oxide.
Good thing you never had to use them.
Yeah. It's a great high.
Right, well...
It's a fun high.
Well, I know the Grateful Dead did a few albums on it. Well, okay, so you set the stage for there. You were interested in engines and making things go fast. Okay, and then how did it evolve?
Every so often, you know, in the early 50s, there were a lot of UFOs around. You know, they were around all the time, and I don't know why they wanted to come around. I guess they were doing their introduction act. You know, we're here, folks. So we were into going fast, and the UFO really moved. I mean, it could go 0 to 500 miles an hour in about a second and a half. You know?
So you were watching these things and observing their performance
we were
characteristics?
reading about them and watching them, and we'd go out on the Salt Flats, and sometimes we could see them, and they were zipping across out there, and they'd come to the races, is a good way to put it.
Were you ever in the company of someone of notoriety who witnessed these UFOs?
Notoriety? No, I can't think of anybody.
So you saw this and it turned you on to a larger universe, and then how did it proceed from there?
Well, at that point we started figuring out, well, how can you